Real questions, real answers for real life. Come on in and pull up a chair. You're at 1850 Main Street with Michael DelGiorno and David Zanotti.
How could a one-sentence constitutional amendment on the ballot in Florida change the course of the entire November election?
I remember when we were analyzing the 2016 election, and we kind of looked at this as an outsider referendum election against incumbents, and everything kind of kept going that way for Trump. Then the DNC kind of blocked the Bernie Sanders. We ended up with the ultimate outsider, Donald Trump, not against the ultimate Democrat outsider, Bernie Sanders, but the ultimate insider, Hillary Clinton. And we looked at each other and we said, you know what? Game on. This has a chance. Yeah. I felt the same way, and a much different sick feeling this week when I see what's happening with an abortion ruling by the Supreme Court in Florida and how it could impact the election in November. And David, I got the sneaking suspicion that Florida is in play for Joe Biden.
You know, I've read the same article, or at least one of the articles that you read when we were doing your morning show about the Democrats suddenly last night and today, just the day after April Fool's Day, and this whole placing of Amendment 4, the abortion amendment on the Florida ballot, coming back saying, guess what? We got this. We've got a shot to win Florida. And they've got a shot, they think, to take out Rick Scott, to win a seat they didn't have a chance to win in the U.S. Senate as well. And they're thinking we might spiral this whole abortion thing up to actually dump Trump.
You got to give credit where it's due, right? It's a perfect play. And then when I ran this gut feeling by you, it got worse because I realized you're getting everything with this. As marijuana goes, so abortion goes. So you get the marijuana vote out. That brings the abortion vote with it. Abortion vote brings the marijuana vote with it. And then you got the 6-week barrier. So you even got some people that necessarily aren't pro-abortion, but they think 6 weeks is too different. It's a perfect storm.
Well, and then it gets a little bit worse because if you put all the history together from what happened from 2023 till today, but roughly over a year's time, Florida in 2023, the legislature passed a 6-week ban on abortion, but it's not like the worst 6-week ban you've ever seen. It sets the 6-week limit at the time where a person can get an abortion unregulated. And then from there, it goes into questions like rape, incest, child trafficking, if something went wrong. Right? And so you've got that part of it. Then there's also a provision in regards to life and health of the mother past the 6-week time frame. In other words, they set as many exceptions as I've seen in a rule to date put together so that it shows they clearly are trying to think through all the options. They want to have an early cutoff, but they don't want it to be an absolute ban. And they're trying to be very sensitive to the reality that and it also has fetal abnormalities in it, even into the late terms. So they're trying to put up all the pieces and parts. In other words, if the bill that they had passed had been 15 weeks with all those exceptions, it would be heralded as one of the most balanced liberal ban votes. But so and a year ago, 6 weeks looked pretty good to most people coming off of the Dobbs decision. Right. What turned it was Trump's criticism of the 6-week ban. So Trump put the criticism on it, and that cracked support on the pro-life community. And then here's DeSantis running against Trump. Trump's threatened by DeSantis, so he attacks DeSantis on the 6-week ban. So the other side's sitting back there licking their chops because if they can get this Amendment 4, on the ballot in Florida, if the Supreme Court will let them put it on, which they did, now they're in a perfect position. They got Trump and DeSantis split in Florida. They're out there screaming on CNN and MSNBC that this is the harshest ban. It's the worst thing. And, it's the end of the world. It's nowhere near that, but that's what they're masquerading in it. Now they've got people in this decision point. You can either take the terrible, god-awful, destructive, demonic, Hitlerian 6-week ban, or you can take our utopian no rules at all. Through all 9 months of pregnancy, we'll restore Roe and take it even farther. Or you can have this terrible thing. So now they come out with that as a choice.
You said something that I think really kind of gets the whole thing to where everybody can really get their arms around it and understand it. And that is, if you took, I don't know what it would be, 5, 12 pages to explain the true intent and the true history of this, but that's not, it's all going to get reduced to one sentence, and one sentence that's so clear to reject.
It's a 1-sentence amendment that's got 37 words. Now, they're attempting to recodify, but even enshrine Roe versus Wade in the Constitution with 37 words. There's not a single definition in any of the words. There's not a definition for viability. There's not a definition for medical provider. I mean, you could be, we've all seen these like medical services companies that come up on streaming videos, like for hims and for hers and whatever this. Those people could be prescribing abortion pills in Florida. They could be doing anything. I mean, it's a terribly constructed law. It'd be a horrific. You could never get away putting this kind of a piece of legal construction in a statute. Why on earth would you ever dream to put it in the Constitution?
That, and I feel like we've lived it already in Ohio. In Ohio, it was what, 40 million? How much was spent in Ohio?
58 million is the final count.
58 million in Ohio, and that was a much different situation.
In an off election year.
And an off election, and the way it was written. This is on a silver platter, and it's probably going to bring, well, you've estimated close to $400 million to the state.
I think it'll be at least $200 million. Yeah, because here's the crazy thing. And I mean, it's a perfect storm for the pro-aborts and all their allies. Think about this one.
It's a perfect storm for Joe Biden, too.
Oh, it's DeSantis' home state. So if they take this thing down, they probably put an end to DeSantis' career because he's got nowhere to go. He's not going to be vice president. He's out of the governor's office in 2 years. There's no Senate seats open. The last political campaign statewide for DeSantis is a crushing defeat on this abortion proposal. That's one. Number two, they win it in a red state. Number three, they win it in a 60% supermajority state. Number four, they win it in Donald Trump's home state. So what they end up doing is telling the entire world and the entire political infrastructure and all the major corporations and all the funders, we won in the worst case scenario you could ever win in. Therefore, the abortion debate is over for America. Our 37-word sentence is good enough for anybody. This should now be the law of the land.
We worried in Ohio that the game was we're going to do it in Ohio, we're going to pull it off in Ohio, and then we're going to sell it as a precedent to the country. It sells itself as a precedent to the country if they pull it off in Florida.
It's over. I mean, you're basically looking at trends in history. This will be the end of the beginning of what life looks like post-Roe. Now, I'm not suggesting that people in Florida will give up the fight, that it's the last play. But what you'll be with an enshrined Roe versus Wade proposal like this with no definitions, the people in Florida, just like they spent 50 years under the shadow of death in Roe versus Wade, they'll be under the shadow of this amendment maybe for another 50 years, fighting to chip it away to knock it down.
And does this make America at that point not just pro-abortion, but pro-death? I mean, they've always been one and the same. I get that, but you know where I'm headed in terms of a meter.
The reason that I think you're right. The reason I might not go that far yet, but it's awful close to dropping off the edge. The reason I wouldn't go that far yet is it's yet to be seen what would happen if Planned Parenthood got their ultimate dream of total absolute control. For example, if this amendment passes, the legislature won't be able to do a thing to touch abortion, period. No law. They won't even be able to vote against funding coming through state tax dollars for Planned Parenthood because that will be restricting abortion. I mean, there's no end to the chaos that this thing will create and that the battle that will happen in the state of Florida. Now, in Florida, the Republicans, since the last presidential election, have registered 850,000 more voters than the Democrats. That's a pretty big number in a state of 22 million people. You'd think, well, that's it, man. They've only got to get 40% plus one. They should be able to pull that off. You know, the freakiest thing about the 60% supermajority is it encourages people who oppose the amendment to stay home because the other guys aren't going to get 60%. That's what they think.
And then they do.
Yeah. Who's ever seen a $200 million campaign for 37 words? How many lies can you tell? How many concerts can you hold? How many pizza giveaways on university campuses can you have? I mean, this is going to be nuts.
In 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court made a mistake. They decided a child in the womb was not a person and not endowed with the right to life. Since that day, America has walked in the shadows of death. Even now, after the final overturning of Roe v. Wade, the shadows threaten to grow longer. In the 1980s, Phil Keaggy released a song titled Little Ones, hoping to awaken America to the light of life. Miles apart and years away from meeting, Michael and David both heard that song. Both heard the cry of the unborn. and both prayed that God would show them a way to speak out for life. Please follow the link in this episode's description to hear Phil Keaggy's song, Little Ones.
This is not political for us, and I know that from being with you. In fact, it was the same song. I'm down in New Orleans. You're in Cleveland. You're 10 years older than me. I think I'm still a teenager. And the same song reached both of us, spoke to our hearts, and committed our lives to speak for the unborn. So I believe that God is sacred. His creation is sacred. We are made in his image. I believe as Americans, we're failing life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I believe life begins at conception. This is so heartbreaking for me. And I'm always in it for the unborn child. Period. End of story. But for America to take this turn and no one sees it coming in April, when it will so clearly play out in November, in a tactic rather than all of America, once and for all answering the question, when does life begin? Is it sacred? Is this really what we want to be? That's not even how it's going to play out, and their fates will be sealed. That makes me, I can't tell you, physically ill.
Yeah, history is a very fickle game, Michael, because a lot of times we wake up 20 years past the moment and realize, oh my gosh, it all changed right there. And this is what this feels like now because of that song, Phil Keaggy's song, Little Ones. You and I were further launched into this sense of commitment in regards to the unborn. And my appreciation has grown in this as well, especially with what's happened in the last 10 years of Roe, with the introduction of chemical abortions as well. There is no way to quantify the amount of pain and regret that has been caused to American motherhood, to women in this country, because of this unfettered approach that abortion is just take a few pills and it all goes away and you'll live life with no regrets. And that's fueling a lot of this as well. So you've got a big pharma component here as well. And of course, you've got the profiteering side of this thing as well, because Planned Parenthood, while they don't make billions of dollars on abortions, whether they're chemical or surgical, they make billions of dollars in contributions. And it's the services that they provide that give them the platform to solicit contributions in the private sector and also then to bring them in through government grants. And that's what they're all about. They are basically feathering their nests for the next 50 years. If they can break down this opposition to their core service base, which is abortion.
So let me dust out a couple of things. Who's the most, I sense Joe Biden's in play, and that everybody's going to be probably not election night because I think it's going to spill over a few days. It's going to take a while. It's going to be that close if it doesn't go to Congress. But there's going to be people that are going to see, and it's possible pretty early on, you may find out something about Michigan not going Biden's way or Pennsylvania going Trump's way. And everybody's going to be getting the sense and feeling, oh, here we go. This is the 2016 map. And then get blindsided by this Florida. But we'll talk more about Biden. How vulnerable are House of Representative members in close race with this kind of energy, this kind of money? And by the way, with that's going to come the ground game. They will find the ballots and they will get them to the ballot box.
And they'll have the money to do it. Yeah.
And who's the low end fruit here? There's only one Senate seat,
yes.
U.S. Senate seat.
But it's the more vulnerable one. It's Rick Scott's seat. So
Rick Scott
there's a play.
And all the House seats.
And then the driving engine behind this is that the pro-aborts know they've got to get a 60% supermajority on this measure. And so wow. So they're going to be driving every single possible engine that they can to get people out for this amendment.
I can't judge the hearts of men I don't know. And I'm not called to judge hearts. I'm called to love people. But I think it's pretty telling that the morning after the Supreme Court makes this ruling, the administration and the strategists for the administration, the first words out of their mouth is, we think Florida's in play. That tells me they really don't care about this issue on the ballot as much as how they're going to use it to win the state. I mean, it kind of reveals, I think, where they're coming from. If the first word out of their mouth was, this is going to be a victory for women, or this is a chance to get a victory for women, or this is a chance to stop the assault on women, then you would know it was about that. When the first words, remember the old song, let your first thought be love. When your first thought is, I think Joe Biden's in play in Florida, that kind of tells you what they're really in this for.
Makes you wonder how long it will be before the suburban women of Philadelphia and all these suburban women around Tampa and Tallahassee and in Duval County and Jacksonville are going to come to the realization that they're being used as pawns. They're not going to have abortions. They know that. They want to gin up the idea that something's been ripped and taken away from them. And this is the way to make all of the issues regarding human sexuality and feminism and everything else. And suddenly you win the gigantic social justice trophy award by voting for the murder of innocent children. That somehow has become a virtue.
So we got congressional seats that are vulnerable now, Senate seat that's vulnerable now, the presidential map that's now vulnerable now. And your choice is find money that you're already kind of short on or behind the ball, and people where you're always behind the ball in ground game. You don't even engage in mail-in and early voting. And you got to center all these resources now to protect Florida. So even if you do move all of your money and all of your ground troops to Florida, then what happens in Pennsylvania, Arizona, Nevada when you're not looking?
Well, and think about the global money. Think about the Soros cartel and John Podesta's teams. Think about the amount of money, not just from the United States that will come in, the global money that will come in through all of these setups that they have through these C3s and C4s that they've set up with Arabella advisors, et cetera. I mean, this is now, and the other thing about it that's so frustrating is that money will all be spent on Florida media. Well, Florida media, what are they going to do? Are they going to suddenly say, well, gee, let's have a fair debate about this? No, they will censor the opposition. And so the opposition is literally going to have to do all of their own communicating, because I guarantee you the Associated Press will be as biased on this as anyone can be. So will all the USA Today papers. So you won't be able to get a fair shot online or in any print documents. And the media is going to be completely saturated with this song. This is a mess, man.
They'll have the money for sure. And by the way,
they'll get it.
Florida is a nightmare state in that these are all major markets. Orlando's a major radio television market. Tampa's a major radio television market. Miami's a major television. Going down the list.
Yep.
Jacksonville. So it's a very expensive state. It's one of the most expensive states. Probably Texas, Houston, and California are the three most expensive states to try to become a governor or a senator because of these major markets. It's going to be, at best, a money drain. Let me do it this way. If worst case scenario is it could play a role in losing control of the House. It could play a role in losing control of the Senate. It could play a role in giving Biden the Electoral College map. Well, that's all worst case scenario. Plus, you're moving money to try to compete, and you might even lose some other states. What's a more reasonable scenario? What's the best this could turn out? Because I have such a feeling that most people in early April are blind to this ticking time bomb that's going to go off in November.
Number one, the Trump campaign better wake up in a hurry and recognize that
they're a little distracted.
They've got to make peace with Ron DeSantis, and they've got to make peace with this Florida legislation and criticizing it. There's a simple answer for the Trump people. Look, maybe 6 weeks isn't the best number. Maybe as the couple of years have gone on, we're thinking there's a difference. But if you pass a stupid amendment like this one, you forfeit your right to legislative redress. It's in the Constitution now, and it says no law shall be made. You literally throw away your legislative power to change it. That's a stupid way to solve a complicated problem with one sentence and one shot, with nothing being defined except in the favor of the bullies. All right. So the Trump people should definitely make a pact and assist. Rick Scott's got to jump up. Now, he's good at raising money and he's good at running statewide. He's got to step up in a hurry. And DeSantis has got to step up. Those are three players that can make a serious impact, and they have got to figure this out. And I pray God that they do. You know, Michael, 1,026,000 children died from abortion last year. Sometimes I think if we just made that a commercial in 15 seconds on the screen, 1,026,000 children died from abortion last year.
We've had a Holocaust already this decade.
Yeah, and the number is growing. Abortion is up since the Supreme Court walked away from Roe versus Wade. So we know this is a reaction. This is a reaction. Now, this is either where this is where the battle changes, or this is where the battle's lost. This is a very serious moment. It won't mean that all issues are done, but I'm telling you, this is a big one, and people have got to wake up to it now. Of course, the question is, well, gee, what do we do? I mean, it's nice to talk about it. What do you do? Well,
I have one. Can I do one?
Sure.
I think right now, if Donald Trump really cares about the unborn, I know Ron DeSantis really cares about the unborn. If they want to put the unborn even above their political ambition, you need to reconsider a Trump DeSantis ticket, if nothing else, to stop this in Florida.
That's a great thought. Now, I'll tell you what. I'll take a try. I mean, I'm not going to tell people.
That's
who
my
I'm voting
soul
for.
crying out in desperation, but it's true.
That's you know what? I won't even try to improve on that or even amend it. I let that stand right where it is. I got you on that. In addition to that, they better start looking at collecting their allies and explaining to them how desperately important making sure that pro-life forces in Florida are funded for this. I'm not saying they've got to match them dollar for dollar, but they've got to get really close. You can't win this fight. And then the other thing is, this is way deep underground stuff. This is like, the communications coming out of Stalag 13. I mean, this is from people that are
You might want to, for some that are younger, you might want to explain Stalag.
Yeah.
Hogan's Heroes.
Yeah, Hogan's Heroes.
That's a long reference.
This is where people who really know what the other guys are saying, I'm telling you, we have got to pray that the pro-life forces in Florida wake up, realize the threat that they're in, and figure out how to play nicely together. Because so far you're hearing nothing from the Florida Catholic Conference. You're hearing nothing from Florida Right to Life. You're hearing almost nothing from major pro-life organizations that have been there in the past. I don't know if they're so blown up by the fact that they actually have to play defense right now because the other guys got on the offense. I don't know what's going on. I'm trying to find out. I've been in Florida for months trying to learn what's happening. And now these people have got to get together. And I'll tell you, it's a tough task in this market because post-COVID, most pastors are more afraid of offending somebody online or losing somebody from not coming to church anymore than they are talking truth. But if the churches in Florida don't stand up on this one, it's lost. They've got to come to the table.
Did you know that you can hear Michael and David every day on your morning show on the iHeartRadio network? You can tune in daily or log on live to the free iHeart mobile app. Get a head start on the big stories of the day every day on your morning show. Then join us here where the conversation continues. Subscribe today so you don't miss a minute and visit 1850mainstreet.com to find out more. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.